Well, it looks like at the very least, John Bolton is going to get what he wanted. As you are no doubt aware, the United States has carried out a bombing attack on Iran, where they have attacked a non existent nuclear weapons program. There are no known casualties at this time. It's not believed that anybody was actually killed in the bombing, and there was information suggesting that the areas that were bombed had actually been evacuated about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, which means that no one was actually harmed in the middle of these bombings. Now, the United States claims that this was to fight a supposed Iranian nuclear weapons program, a nuclear weapons program that has been allegedly been under construction since 1982, and that numerous statements from Israeli officials, most notably Benjamin Netanyahu, over the decades have been claiming that Iran was only a few months away from having a nuclear weapon, is what I am specifically referring to, although there has never been any evidence of any nuclear weapons anywhere in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, the Ayatollah has specifically said that nuclear weapons were in fact haram because they did not differentiate between innocent. In other words, the mass destructive nature of nuclear weapons was something that was considered un-Islamic and thus not acceptable. But we know that the real reason for these attacks were in defense of Israel, for retaliation for Israel because of its own incompetence and inability to strike back at Iran. Now, the reason this retaliatory strike was carried out on Iran on behalf of Israel is because of, frankly, Israel's outright incompetence. We've seen the footage of the interceptor missiles inside of Israel completely failing, not managing to do their job at all. In fact, many of them shooting up and then managing to crash back down to earth, causing casualties themselves. As you will also recall, Israel carried out strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities several days ago, prompting Iran to carry out a retaliatory strike, or many retaliatory strikes against the Zionist entity. So, in the fact that Israel has been horribly humiliated by these Iranian strikes, that Israel has been completely unable to stop them in any way, shape, or form. The Iron Dome has turned out to be nothing more than a complete and utter joke, and that they have been completely devastated by Iranian missiles. They've asked the United States to step in and carry out attacks for them. Now, yes, I am aware that previously Israel had asked the United States to step in for them and join them in an attack, and they refused to do so. This, however, is not quite this. It is essentially the same thing, but officially it is not the same thing, because this was only an attack on the nuclear program. And that is what U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said when asked, is the U.S. at war with Iran? He said, no, we're at war with their nuclear program. That would be like me punching J.D. Vance in his stupid face, saying that, no, I'm not in a fight with J.D. Vance. I'm just in a fight with his stupid face. Of course they're at war with Iran. They've literally committed an act of war, bombing the country. Now, this is bound to be escalated because Iran has to respond to this attack by the United States, the unprovoked attack by the United States, which had nothing to do with the United States whatsoever, was a response to Israel attacking Iran. Now, what that measure is going to be, we don't exactly know yet, but we seem to have a fairly good idea. According to reports coming out of Tehran, the Iranian parliament has voted to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Now, apparently, this still has to go before the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, for confirmation to be carried out. Essentially, what this would actually do would be to shut off basically a trade route where 25% of the world's oil actually passes through. And you can imagine what this is going to do to the price of oil. Even in like a wartime situation, you could see probably about a 5% premium on top of insurance for many ships that would be carrying oil just around the world in general. But to shut off something that carries the area that carries 25% of the world's oil is going to drastically increase the price, because now they'll have to go all the way around the Horn of Africa in order to make those deliveries. Not to mention that, anything coming in for shipment to Israel is now not coming through at all, even though, the Houthis have already made it clear that shipments to Israel are not coming through at all. Anyway, so this is a very serious retaliatory move by Iran if they do, in fact, actually take it. If this is something that they do manage to carry out, it will be very serious and have very serious reaching consequences all across the entire planet, not just instability in the local region due to oil prices and the shipments of oil itself. But there's another interesting dimension to this. This is the final nail in the coffin to that idea that Trump was the anti-imperialist candidate. Constantly, we were given this MAGA idea that Trump was the anti-imperialist candidate, that he was going to be there to fight imperialism, that he was the no war candidate, that he was the candidate of peace and anti-imperialism. And I pointed out only fools were actually believing this. And the reason for that was quite simple. As you would know from even a basic understanding of Marxist theory, imperialism doesn't come about because of a leader. It comes about because of the functioning of the system itself. It's not something a leader chooses to do. It's something that the system needs to happen. And that if you change the man in power, it's not going to change anything. It doesn't change the way the system functions. And you have fools like Caleb Maupin who ran around saying, oh, we got to vote Trump because he's the candidate of peace and he's the anti-imperialist. I wonder where all that confidence is now. I wonder where that MAGA communist crowd is now, with their declarations that Trump was the anti-imperialist candidate and that we had to vote for him to create peace and anti-imperialism. And how idiotic that entirely was this entire time to anybody who even knew a modicum of Marxist theory. But it goes to show you once again that people, first world people, and that's exactly where this was coming from. It was coming from first world people because it wasn't coming from the third world. We're so insanely desperate to have something to vote for. We're so insanely desperate to not have to do revolution, to not have to look for a revolutionary situation because there isn't one, to not have to look for a revolutionary potential because there isn't one, or no significant one. They were looking for any means necessary to justify voting, anything to justify participating in bourgeois parliamentarism, knowing that it doesn't work. You know that if you vote Republican or Democrat, it doesn't really make a difference. Capitalism is still capitalism. But as long as you've got some kind of vague, like little hope that you can grab onto, that it's going to be different this time. Don't trust me, Trump is going to be the anti-imperialist candidate because he's a political outsider. He's totally different from the rest of them. And that magically changes the entire system because all of a sudden we've got this idea of a deep state that really secretly runs everything. You know how we didn't have any idea of a deep state before Trump existed in politics, where we just called it politics. Now, all of a sudden, once we have this outsider, now all of a sudden there's this deep state. In other words, how capitalism actually works coming up. And all of it, once again, another symbol why voting does not work. Voting is a bourgeois trap. And no, you don't get to point to the Bolsheviks during revolutionary times, tactically voting, or them running in elections trying to garner support, because it's not the same thing as you voting for a bourgeois party pretending that you're fighting the system. Trump, once again, a fraud. You, once again, a fool. Imperialism, once again, dragging us towards another world war.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.